Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The new concert band and jazz ensemble music releases from Excelsior Music Publishing are here now and available from wherever you get your band music, featuring works of all levels from an incredible composer roster. Listen, browse, and get inspired at excelsiormusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves this. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players, not just for your beginners, but for older students as well. Join thousands of students and bands already seeing the difference. And keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. Tuner Caddy is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The Tuner Caddy was created by Mark Casperson, a band director with over 38 years of experience. Like most of us, he was tired of dropped tuners, wasted time, and students fumbling with their gear. So he did what any passionate teacher would do. He invented a solution. Mark designed the original Tuner Caddy after testing 57 different versions. The classic model fits right onto most music stands, holds any tuner, and even has a pencil holder. Then he added the Student Pro, a slimmer, binder-friendly with magnets, so it sticks right to the wire stands. And now there's even the TCT60M, a full tuner and metronome combo that's transposable and includes a 6-foot mic. Super practical and more affordable than most other options out there. The best part is that these tools don't just help kids stay organized, they actually improve how we teach intonation and tone. Tuner Caddy is being used by some of the top programs in the country, from Texas to Virginia, and it's even been on stage at the Midwest Clinic and Music for All Festival. You can find Tuner Caddy at tunercaddy.com, at local retailers, or through Music and Arts, Sweetwater, and Premier Music Teaching Aids. They even offer support for educators writing grants. Check them out at tunercaddy.com. If you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com to give at least $5 or $3 a month, and it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 280. I'm here with Meghan Faye Olswanger, Vanessa Perala, and Phil Hartman. How's everybody doing?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Phil, how you doing?
I am doing wonderful. Sorry, I didn't talk in turn.
I love that. We're here today talking about mentorship, and I just love this because, like, the three of you have had this, lots of shared experiences as band directors in the mentorship realm, and sort of in all things band director. And I'm glad we can have this conversation today. So, why don't we start about the just a quick introduction for each one of you. If you don't mind, Vanessa, could you start? Tell us about your career, where you teach, and what you're good at, things like that.
Well, I am an Idahoan, born and raised. Went to high school here in the Treasure Valley, and then went to Boise State. And my first job was teaching in a community near Boise called Meridian, and I taught high school band for 12 years. And at year 4, they added orchestra. So I spent like the last 8 of that 12 being the instrumental music department, marching band, jazz band, couple orchestras, et cetera. And of course, as you know, anything they drop in your plate, hey, or teach guitar. How about music theory? And then we moved out of state to Utah for about 3 years. And I was really fortunate to get my master's at the University of Utah in instrumental conducting. And that was fantastic. And then when we landed back here in the Boise area, oddly enough, I'm currently teaching elementary and junior high orchestra, and hopefully going to be able to move back over into band soon. We're just kind of waiting for some shuffling and shifting to happen to open up a slot. So that's me.
How similar is orchestra to band? I think people think it's like extremely different.
It's very different. I think the thing for me, it's the language, right? When you think about how I talk to a wind player or how I talk to a percussionist to get the tone quality and the sound I'm looking for, the bow, like a stick with hair, that thing is so weird and it's so vastly different. And how the language, the verbiage, I'm just like, I don't know. It's a head scratcher more often than not.
And when you went to Utah, who did you study with?
Scott Hagen.
Scott Hagen. What did you take out of your time there?
The whole thing, honestly, was just a really amazing experience for me to be able to get in front of a group and to be able to focus on my listening skills. That's where I think the challenge was working with a group that was just at such a high level. And it really pushed me in that area. And then working on the conducting and then increasing the head knowledge. But honestly, the whole thing, working with the students there and the faculty and building the relationships, for me, it was had a huge impact and very transformative.
And probably a
And if
lot.
I could,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying maybe the opportunity just to think about yourself for a little while and like, what are you doing versus the 10,000 children in your room that you're always worried about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very different and coming into it as a teacher who'd spent 12 years in the classroom already, I think it was also a different headspace to be in versus somebody coming right out of their undergrad or having only taught for a couple of years. Like I was ready to learn like all the things. Like give me all the stuff versus can I just get through this class to get to the next thing?
What I was going to jump in and say is Vanessa is an example of if you're an outstanding teacher, you can make the transition from band to orchestra because she is truly an outstanding teacher. And when she started off in orchestra, yeah, she was a newbie and she was learning a ton. But because she understands students and how they learn and how to be engaging and how to, what do you know, contact a mentor and things like that, she is now an outstanding orchestra teacher. So if you're an outstanding person, outstanding teacher, you can make that transition.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful. Meghan, your turn. Tell us about you.
Well, I am not an Idaho native. I'm originally from Southern California. My husband was born and raised in this area. We didn't intend to move back here, but we are part of that generation that graduated into the '09 job market of doom. And so we ended up here because it was going to be a job for me that he could then follow and get a job close. So I started in 2009 teaching high school band in Caldwell, Idaho, which is, I mean, I think most of us would classify as rural, although I think places in Idaho would probably say that Caldwell is not particularly rural. So I started there, taught there for 4 years, moved over to Meridian High School, which is where I got to work directly with Phil and Vanessa in the same district. Taught there for 3 years and was actually really happy and not intending to leave, but got persuaded to come over to Boise High School. And I've been at Boise High School since 2016. So I think this is year 10 that I'm starting with Boise High. So 17 years total, all high school band the whole time.
Love that. For Phil or Vanessa, what's something that Meghan's really good at?
She is an outstanding communicator. She is unbelievably organized. She cares a ton about her students and their success. And she is the fastest music teacher I know to answer a text.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
It's incredible. It's unworldly. I don't know how she does it.
And I would add, Meghan is an amazing advocate and champion for other people. She is very much about lifting others up and bringing them in and giving them opportunity. And it's one of the things that I admire about her.
Agreed.
That's incredibly kind. Thank you.
All right, Phil, your turn. 2 minutes or under. Go.
Okay.
Good luck.
I'm an Idaho native. I graduated from Boise State. I taught junior high band for 5 years. I went to graduate school in West Virginia, go Mountaineers. I came back and was a high school band director for 27 years. Felt like we had a successful program, super happy. But there's a time that you feel like you need a change. And so I left Centennial High School and was out a total of 1 year before Boise State University called me up, said, we have a part-time position you might be interested in. And I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds and then said, I'd be glad to take it. And I've been an adjunct professor at Boise State for the past 10 years, doing music ed, supervising student teachers, mentoring, and doing leadership workshops throughout the state.
Well, and how lucky they are to have somebody helping with, student mentoring, student teachers who's been in the classroom, right? How many times have we seen that that's not always the case?
I would say that like when we get judges in any venue, concert band, marching band, whatever, when they find out that, and my wife also does it, so we have a combined approximately 70 years worth of music education experience that we can contribute. And pretty much all those judges so forth make the same comment you made, which is unbelievable that Boise State has the foresight or whatever, I don't know, to hire people from music ed with that kind of experience.
So Vanessa, Meghan, what's something Phil was really good at as a teacher?
So I think Phil is really good at mentorship, but also at listening. And I know that we'll talk about this more later, but I mean, for me at least, and I think for Vanessa too, I mean, don't know that I would still be here if it weren't for Phil. And I think that's a pretty common experience for band teachers in our area. I think there's a lot of us who not just respect him and look up to him, but consider him like a true friend. You know, we joke at times that he's been the band dean for our area, but also like he's like the band therapist and the band counselor.
Yeah, I think in addition to his incredible teaching in the classroom and his high level of excellence, one of many things I just so appreciate about Phil is the connection that he creates with people. And it's authentic and it's genuine and he cares deeply, whether it's for his students or for others in the profession. And I know that I can text or call at any time and he's there. And I really think he epitomizes somebody who is on your side, who has your back. And again, I think that was inside the classroom when I watched him teach and outside the classroom. And I think that's part of what endears him to all of us, but also just it expands his reach and impact in our community.
Oh, it's an honor to be in a room with such fine music educators. Phil, now that they said some good things about you, you said you want to talk about how much you failed and how failing when you were younger helped. Can we hear about that story?
Absolutely. I was a pretty successful student at Boise State as an undergrad, and I got lots of awards and so forth. And so I felt the expectations were high for me entering as a teacher. And so I took a junior high job in Boise. And because I felt the expectations were high, I did not reach out to anyone for help. And the program had been struggling prior to me going in there. And I thought that was great for me because I could go in and set the world on fire. But as most of us, didn't have the skills to really accomplish everything right away. But because I'd had a lot of success, I didn't want people to know that I was struggling and that I needed help. So I did not reach out to anyone. And everybody'd always say, "How's it going?" I'd say, "Terrific." But it was an extremely difficult first year. And if I would have understood the whole idea of mentorship, which wasn't really a thing at the time. I mean, everybody was an island in the stream and nobody really reached out. But if I would have done that, I feel like I would have been more successful right away and certainly had a calmer and more relaxed lifestyle and better wellness. So that literally is one of the reasons why mentorship, I feel like, is such an important part of me and our music education teaching at Boise State. The very first day of class in band and orchestra methods, we talked about having a mentor, and we continue to talk about it virtually every day the remainder of the semester.
Tiffany Hitz talks about the mentors are people that are your people, like people that kind of get you and people who understand your situation. So I think, finding the right mentors are really important as well. So Phil, when did you realize you had to ask for a mentor? Like you say, you failed. Was there a moment when you went, aha, maybe I need to change something?
Yes, there was. That first year, I took over from somebody who was on a year's leave of absence. And the principal said, "Oh, don't worry about it. He's not coming back." So I turned down another good job to take this one. And lo and behold, he came back. So in that summer away, I should say I interviewed and got another job for the very next year. But in that summer between, I realized that I didn't have the skills, education chops necessary to succeed, and I'm just going to need to get some help. And all that, those first 5 years of teaching junior high really instilled in me the need to do that. So when I took over at a brand new high school, Centennial High School, brand new, My mentor was John King, who I'd student taught with, and I asked him every question possible in order to have the answers so that I could go in front of the students and feel like I was competent and could say the right thing even when I was so inexperienced. So, yeah, I think it was the transition time into my second junior high job, and then especially learning all that, and then going to the high school and just and that was before cell phones and texting and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
John King, God bless his soul, he would, I mean, we called on a landline and he'd answer on his prep, but he would do everything he possibly could to help me be successful because he knew he was impacting all the students in Centennial as well. So, yeah, right away, mentoring became a huge part of my soul, even though I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah. How has mentorship, I guess this is a question for, I don't know who, all three of you probably, sort of helped with teacher retention and growth within the, I guess, Idaho music education community?
Well, go ahead. I can say something, but I just talked a lot. Megan, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I can just share from my own perspective. I mean, I have a unique story in that I'm not from this area. So nobody knew me when I came in and I didn't know anybody. And there's a lot of learning to do about the culture of a new place, especially when you come from a place that doesn't have a similar culture. Southern California does not look like Boise, Idaho, does not look like the Treasure Valley. It was really hard for me at 23, because that's what I was, to be the high school director, because there was just one high school. And to really be seen as like the head band director for the district for people who had far more experience than me. I mean, I felt like I had a good skill level, but I also didn't have the skill level to be in charge of the district in that way. And I had reached out to like the nearest high school band director and didn't really get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and I think that's like some of it is like just not personalities of the area. And so I kind of went on my own for a long time. And Phil and I actually had this conversation the other day. Like I was at that point engaged and getting married, so I still had people in my life, but I was really lonely professionally. Just felt like I was kind of doing it by myself. And I will never forget the day that the West Ada band directors invited me to go get beer with them. And I was like overjoyed that I was going to be able to sit down and just be with people who had like the same experience that I did on a day-to-day basis. It just, for me, it felt like coming home and being part of a community and seeing the things that I was struggling with were issues they were having. And it really changed the trajectory of my career. I definitely came in with the mindset of like, this is a job to get some experience and then we'll go elsewhere. And while I've changed schools, I mean, we're still here in the area. And I can tell you that in 2009, that was not the intention. It wasn't the goal to stay here. And my mentors are sitting in the room. Phil and Vanessa are here with me. You know, I get to see them as friends and as colleagues for a decade or more. And like that changes your investment in the community.
And we were happy at that meeting because Megan paid.
That's
ahead,
definitely
Vanessa.
not true on what I was making at Caldwell.
Well, and I would add, I mean, stating the obvious, teaching can be a very isolating profession. And I think the addition of being the only music teacher in your not music teacher, but the only band director, the only choir teacher, orchestra, and in some cases in Idaho, because we're so rural, they are the music teacher. And having somebody to go to bridge that gap so that you don't feel so isolated and so alone, I think is a critical piece to trying to retain teachers within your region, your state, your area. And so grateful again, and we can maybe talk about this later, just for having people like Phil and others that are there to help our young teachers and our new teachers not feel so alone.
I've had a bunch of people reach out over the last few years in doing this podcast that they realize that the band world, meaning like the teachers like us, are so giving of their time and they want to help. And what is it, the a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. People have asked, how do you get such guests? And because I've had a lot of guests who like everybody would know. And I say, you just ask. You don't have to pay them. You just ask and they want to be there. So I think younger teachers especially need to know that teachers with experience want to help because they've been there. None of us were amazing right away. We've all had this journey towards whatever we can be. So it's definitely a helpful environment. So people need to reach out, even if they don't have a developing mentorship program in their area. We can talk about that later too. Just know that other people want to help you. And if you find somebody that doesn't, they don't really represent the community.
And what I think a lot of people, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think a mistake a lot of younger mentees or just beginning teachers make, I certainly did, was you don't want to bother them because they're leading busy lives. I don't know if I want to bother them with a silly question. And they don't stop to think that for virtually everybody I've ever met, if somebody asks you a mentorship question, it's a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a true compliment. I don't know anybody that they're bothering by asking a question. I think, how can you not take it as a compliment if somebody seeks your advice? So yeah, to all those people who might be in their first, second, fourth, fifth, whatever, just take a deep breath and ask the silliest of questions. That's what I did when I mentioned that with John King. I asked them silly questions, but it helped me a ton.
And if you're asking somebody you view as a very good band director, odds are they're good at managing their time, which means if they can't get back to you this moment, they'll get back to you as soon as they can. So you're really not bothering them because we can all like leave that message unread, right? And then get to it in half an hour when we're not teaching or whatever.
Exactly.
Well, and I usually I'm so sorry for bothering you. And I always tell people who are asking me, like, I'm good with boundaries. I'm not going to answer you if I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're having a conversation, like that's because I'm just as engaged as you are.
There's a question that's kind of come up, which I know is not really pertinent to what we're talking about with mentorship, but 3 people from Idaho, a state I've never been to and I want to go to at some point. I had a conversation with somebody who was in Kansas, I believe, about like teaching in the rural community, like what that's like. What's the population of Idaho? Do you know, like in ballpark?
I don't know ballpark, but it's not big. It's like 40th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maine's got like 1.3 million kind of thing. But I think I'm in a more populated area than that. So for people who are teaching in rural communities, such as in Idaho and lots of other places, some tips. I mean, I think good teaching is good teaching, but there's definitely, things you need to deal with when you're teaching in a community like that.
And I think what's difficult about our state is like we're so geographically spread out, and more than half of the state population is in kind of that Boise metropolitan area known as the Treasure Valley. So actually the 3 of us really aren't rural teachers, but everybody else outside of this area for the most part pretty much is.
So I should have done my homework. All right. I love that. Very nice way of saying that.
Well, and I do think that being a rural teacher just complicates and magnifies the whole, I don't know if I want to bother them. Like if Meghan or Vanessa says, can you come out and watch my class? I could say, sure, because it's like a half-hour drive to get there. But if somebody from a small school 3 hours away says, can you come out and watch my class? They're reluctant to do that, even though honestly, if my schedule would allow it, I would do it. So I think, being in a small rural place, you still just got to ask. Ask the people like myself, the semi-retired people. And we're going to talk in a little bit, I know, about the attributes of a good mentor, but find a person you respect and you feel like would be a great mentor and just ask. It doesn't hurt anything to ask. And
they don't have to drive if they're doing a Zoom call. Or if you say, Correct. Hey, I'm going to record the rehearsal and just send it to them and be like, let me know what you think.
Well, and I think that one of the really difficult things for our rural folks is that, like, if you are the only person doing that thing, it's proximity. Who else near you is, like, how do you even get in touch? How do you know who to contact? Where with the Boise area, we have festivals and we have various meetings and things, so you can, and we're large enough that you're going to find somebody who's doing the same thing you are. And I think the more rural you are, the harder it is to find somebody close to you who's doing the same thing, because there might be one other person. And so, but like Phil said, it's like, keep asking, keep digging, keep trying to find that person to see so that you can get the support that you need.
I love that. That's also one reason why the band podcast realm is great, right? Because I mean, I've talked to people from New Zealand who are like, "Hey, we get together and listen to it," and because there's no PD down in New Zealand, I'm like, "There's people from New Zealand listening to this?" Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So that's what's great about all the band podcasts that are out there, right? Even if you're in a remote area, you can feel like you're connected to other professionals.
100%.
Yeah. So Phil, you mentioned it, talking about some attributes of a good mentor. What do y'all say?
Well, I'll just throw out a couple. There's a lot, and I'll let my good friends talk about some of the others. I think one of the main ones is approachability. I think if you are the type of person who can be unfriendly, or I wouldn't go as far as saying antisocial, but if you're the type of person who is approachable, is friendly, is caring, is welcoming, is a good listener, then I think people are more prone to reach out. And and oftentimes you just have to ask around. Megan talked about when she moved here from California, she at first wasn't having an easy time getting a mentor, but moving and asking around and so forth, I think put her in a more comfortable place. So I think, yeah, that approachability is hugely important. Megan, Vanessa, others?
One of the things I would say is for the mentor side is that being proactive and in reaching out. I found myself thinking this morning in the last, 5-10 years, we've talked more in our society about mental load. And I was thinking about the mental load on a new teacher, right? You're barely keeping your head above water. And I think back to when I was there, and you're carrying so many things that just to even have the bandwidth to reach out to a mentor, sometimes like it doesn't even enter your thinking because you're just managing so much. And I think a really great mentor is somebody who is going to be reaching out and checking in, saying, "Hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help? What do you need right now?" And I'll tell you, I mean, I've had a lot of student teachers, but that's one area that in this conversation with Megan and Phil, I thought, man, I could have done a lot better of that on the backside of just reaching out and saying, "What do you need? Hey, and I'm here for you. Let's go out to coffee. Let's just check in." And I think it really strengthens that mentorship relationship, but it opens the door, I think, for the young teacher to be like, "Oh, wait, I really can reach out." Or when I don't have the bandwidth, I know somebody else is going to be there for me because they see me and they know I'm here.
Well, and on the topic of seeing me, one of the things I've noticed with younger teachers is that there's actually a lot of resources out there in terms of like pedagogical and classroom needs. And those are pretty easy to find with a Google search, right? Like there's so many podcasts and websites and Instagram reels and all that kind of stuff. A lot of them, however, are looking for a relationship. They're looking to fit into a community. They're looking for someone to see them not just as a teacher, but as a human. And, all sorts of background. I mean, we have people here who are single, no kids. We have young teachers who are married already or coming into the field later and their kids are older. We have a really wide variety of what that looks like. And so they don't necessarily have kind of a ready-made community outside of, some of them are like have family, but some of them do not. And so they're always looking for someone who's not just going to ask them like, how's it going in their classroom? But I mean, I'll never forget one of the junior high teachers in my first job, like stopped me mid-September and said, "Hey, you've been working since June, and I know your first paycheck is September 25th. Are you okay right now?" And just like someone having the forethought to be like, "You're all right, right? Because it's been 3 months since you've been paid." Just that sort of like seeing them as a person and like what they might be dealing with.
And to follow up on something they said, I do think on the topic of connection, uh, it's hugely better to meet with somebody in person than to get a phone call or exchange a couple texts. And it's not always possible, but everybody in the Treasure Valley knows Phil Hartman will go out to coffee and talk about band stuff or music education stuff at virtually any time. But I do think just that face to face, and a lot of times a mentor's main responsibility is just to listen. And you may go out to coffee for an hour, and of that hour, you may be listening for 50 minutes while the other person totally vents about everything. And they know you probably can't help, but just the simple fact that you have a mentor there to listen, uh, let's say I've been there a million times myself, that I think that strong connection and bond. I think if if the mentee sees you as a friend that they can count on and not like like in my case, somebody from the university coming out to talk to me, um, I think that could be intimidating, but it shouldn't be because mentors are there to be your friend and to help you any way you can. And we may talk about the student teaching relationship, which is not obviously built on friendship, it is built more on mentorship and teaching. But certainly for once you graduate and once you got a job and so forth, you want to seek out that friend who can truly help you.
I found as an introvert, as my wife will say, the great way for me to reach out to somebody is when I'm at a festival and I watch other bands, right? Like to me, the music is a way that I can reach out to somebody. So if I see somebody's band and I'm like, wow, they are really in tune, or wow, their articulation's great, or like I just admire how they play, that's the person I want to reach out to. And I've done that in the past. It's like, hey, loved your rehearsals. I mean, I loved your performance. Can I come watch a rehearsal sometime? That's how I can strike up conversation with somebody, is by watching them and admiring how, okay, their band is better than mine. They know some stuff I don't know. Why don't I go learn from them?
Well, and I think that speaks to mentors that have excellent programs. There's a lot of characteristics of what we're doing in the classroom in regards to our professionalism, our pedagogy, our rapport with students, that those things can translate pretty easily over to mentorship. And I like what you said there, because I think recognizing that excellence not only opens a door to having a conversation, but I think you can get a pretty good sense of somebody's approachability and their likelihood to be able to help you based on kind of the quality of what you're hearing. Now, that doesn't always translate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there is a lot to be said for somebody who is a fantastic teacher. They've learned how to connect and interact with human beings, hopefully in a positive way, which will then make them a great mentor usually.
And I would throw in there also when you talked about, can I come out and visit your band and that type of thing? I think that is wonderful. And one interesting sidelight that I have always talked about in the last 10 years is the number of times that I get asked to come out and work with your band and make your band better, as opposed to, can you come out, watch me teach and offer me some suggestions, is 10 to 1 in favor of, can you help me make my band better? But in the long run, I think we as experienced teachers, the four of us sitting here, would agree that somebody coming out and watching you and giving you suggestions about your teaching, as uncomfortable as that might be, could possibly have a greater, longer term benefit than, can you help my band play more in tune? It's hard to say, help me be a better teacher. If you've been teaching for 10, 15 years, and it's hard to say, can you help me be a better teacher? But I think there's some value in that if you're willing to take that step.
It also sends a great message to your students.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, because it
And
also
because
shows
this
like
is all about them.
a degree of vulnerability, right? Like I'm here to get better too. And it's always scary to have somebody in your room, but then to be able to take that next step and not say, hey, how can you help my kids? How can you help me? How can you help me be more effective? Yeah, it's a great model.
So what have we found are some of the best practices in the mentorship program?
Well, one of the things that I want to kind of reemphasize that Vanessa already said was not waiting for mentees to reach out. It's really the mentor who has theoretically more bandwidth, more availability to, hey, I'm checking in. We have seen some mentors who have kind of taken a backseat and seen their role as like oh, I'll be here if you need me. But oftentimes new teachers don't know what they don't know. And so they need that person to say, ask those questions to really dig into how things are going, not just ask how are things going. I think that's important, but to then ask those leading questions that help you understand like what's going on in the classroom and where they might need some support or some ideas, or just to hear like, hey, that is a really hard thing that you're doing, but it's also the right choice. Keep doing it.
And
I don't think you can be a mentor once a month. I think, like she said, you have to communicate, check in. Now that we can text so easily, I think you just in constant communication can't be a mentor once a month. Sorry, Vanessa.
It's okay. One of the things I remember Phil telling me, it's probably as I was going from year 1 to year 2. And I had the good fortune of student teaching with Phil, and I had worked with he let me work with his marching band. Maybe let isn't a good way to phrase that, Phil. I don't know if you like that, but he was kind enough to let me be on his staff. And I remember going, man, year 2's got to just be so much easier. And I remember him saying, it's not so much that it's easier, it's just that you know better what to anticipate. And I think that's what we as mentors bring to the table, right? We've been there and done that. So we already kind of know what's going to come up, whether it's in the calendar or something that's potentially challenging. And that's where we can step in and really be that support and that safety net for that new teacher. And I think even it speaks even on the personal side to what Meghan said when this other junior high teacher was like, hey, you've been working a long time, you haven't been paid. Like, we know what that's like because we've already been on that part of the journey. And to bring that to a mentee, I think can alleviate and be really, really helpful to them.
Well, and I mean, speaking to that, I mean, the number of times that I've written, a welcome back to school email, I, at this juncture, for the most part, have it down. And in fact, like I have templates for almost everything that I do on a yearly basis. So I can share that, especially now that we have, the resources that we do with Google Drive and such. I can share that easily so that they don't at least have to start from zero when they're reinventing their wheel. So I think there's a lot of just like practical, like, here's a tool that I use, or here's something that I developed, or just even saying, I mean, one of the tips and tricks that I give to the mentees is that first year, every time you create something, you put it in a Google Doc and you put it in a Google folder in your Drive, and you start logging when you sent it, what you titled it, because then next year your bandwidth is you come back and you update it rather than having to start over again. And remember, what is it that I said? When did I send that out? So I think there's a lot of just non-relational, just very practical, like, here, you can use this if you want.
I'd like to take a hard right turn if we can, as I get over my coughing fit. We didn't talk about this, but this is a great opportunity. I would love to hear from 3 professionals. First of all, your main instrument. And secondly, a tip about your main instrument that you wish every band director knew that you know. Who wants to go first?
I play the flute. I play the flute.
Gosh, I live with 2 flute players. I have a little flute PTSD going on.
Yeah. The two things that I see really often is my flute student is wildly out of tune and we've tried everything and I don't know what's going on. Usually it's that you need to check the head joint. You need to take out the bottom end of the cleaning swab and make sure that that line is centered. Usually, especially for young students, like they play with it. And so that cork will get adjusted in or out the wrong way. And it's a simple fix. And please, please, please don't tell your students to roll in or roll out. No, don't do that.
So what should they tell them instead?
It's an air direction thing. So this should be nice and stable and you can control the direction of your air. And the hard part is that you have to try and visualize it, right? So I understand the impetus to like wanting to change the instrument, but really that should just come from your embouchure and the direction of the air. So you can think about bending the air up and down until you find that happy place. That is really the better solution.
I know some people use the Numo Pro by the Carolyn Nussbaum company. Have you seen that, right? It has like the 5 fans on it and you can attach it. And I haven't used it, but I've heard great things about it.
Vanessa, go ahead.
So I play bass clarinet is my main instrument. And gosh, I feel like it's such a big question because it's a weird instrument. I would say, if at all possible during concert band, don't put them on a neck strap. Make sure they've got the peg and
Mhm.
that the instrument is right in front of them versus off to the side, like our saxophone friends. And then the reed mouthpiece ligature setup makes a huge difference. I think this goes for most reeded instruments, but the harder the reed doesn't make you a better player.
Mhm.
I think you have to find the reed strength that's going to give you the best quality sound. Um, I only play on a 3 because it gives me the range and the ability and flexibility to do what I need to do. And then the one thing I would say, unfortunately, that they don't have a lot of control of is the instrument. There's a lot of the beginner instruments or the base model instruments, just, it's so hard to play too far above the break. And it can be done, but if your student is struggling, it's very likely that it's the instrument and not the kid when it comes to that.
So your go-to brands?
I mean, Selmer always makes a really great horn. Yamaha does pretty well. I don't know how well the Artleys and the Bundys, because I haven't seen a lot or played on a lot of
Mhm.
student models in a while. Um, you know, kind of new to the scene is the Bakun. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I'm hearing some really good things about it. So I'm kind of anxious to take my mouthpiece setup and try it like at Midwest
Mm.
at some point in time.
I've also heard people say that they have their bass clarinet players on softer reeds rather than the harder reeds, so they get
Yeah.
the beefier low sound to the group.
Yep. Yep. Otherwise, you get that real thin, airy sound, and ugh,
Mm.
nobody likes that.
Yeah.
Okay, as a trombonist, I'm going to tell you that if you can
Mm.
hear the slide move, then that's not a good thing. That the trombonists learn that the slide is gold, and you have to protect it with every square being of soul part of your being or whatever. But it's true. And I've certainly seen junior high, middle school kids just kind of bang their way up to the chair. And then when they go to play, you can hear when they move their slide, and it's time for a reset. So, skilled teachers obviously teach students to do that. But based on experience for me, a lot, especially in junior high, middle school, those slides, if you can hear them, they're not right.
I went to play my son's slide the other day and I was like, how do you use this? Oh, I don't know. I just put some slide grease on it and it worked. I'm like, I guess we have I guess you need
What's your main instrument, Kyle?
I play the trumpet.
Okay.
Yep. And for me, I learned early in college about the like trying to play a hair flat because like as trumpet players, we all tend to play sharp. And when you play sharp, you're like swimming upstream, like you're just working so much harder. So if you can like find the pitch and like bring it just a hair under and maybe push in and then try to lower it, yeah, you just you get tired less easy. So I also find that I'll talk about marching band and jazz band for a second. So a lot of band directors will say, okay, trumpets, take it down. Okay, brass, let's take it easy. We have a concert in 4 hours or whatever. I've just found that I don't give my kids that excuse. And like, they just don't get as tired because they don't think about getting tired, I guess. I'm just into that. You're in marching band, we're playing, play it where it is. I know we're performing at a show in 4 hours, but you'll recover. So I find the teachers who are woodwind players tend to kind of baby their brass players a little bit more than I do.
As a trumpet player, Kyle can say, "We can do it. Yeah, we got it."
But I'm a mediocre
I,
trumpet player, not a good one. Um, all right, so let's move on. What are some of the challenges that tend to arrive in a mentorship program or mentorship relationship, besides the mentee not asking for help and kind of thinking they know it all?
well, and I'm also going to throw in here while they think the fact that Megan and Vanessa are two of the people in charge of our mentorship program in the state of Idaho. And so they have more experience about the actual process, and they may talk about it if time permits. But I think they are adept at knowing what challenges they have to face in a situation where possibly people haven't asked for mentorship as much. I mean, anybody I've mentored for the most part has asked or that I've had a connection with them, but they have had a lot of experience with people part of the program. So go ahead.
I think one of the challenging things is creating the relationship that Megan was talking about, that really authentic and genuine relationship, if it doesn't happen organically. So like for my relationship with Phil, it just grew out of that contact and that time that I had with him during marching band and as his student teacher. And one of the things that we are facing within our program is, how do we take something that developed or can develop organically and manufacture it within a system? How do we help create opportunity for genuine and authentic connection? Because, and Megan can speak to this, that one of the pieces of feedback we receive from our mentees is they want connection. They don't just want somebody to send them an email and send them a text and be like, cool, do you need anything? They want face-to-face time and they want that personal relationship. And so for us in the capacity that we're working in, I do think that's one of our big challenges, is how do we create an authentic, genuine relationship within a system?
Yeah, and kind of continuing that thought process. I mean, what we have seen as people who are running the mentorship program for Idaho Music, both Vanessa, who is on the mentor side, and me, I'm on the mentee facing side, is that when we say we've had mixed success, it doesn't really feel like there's a wide gradation. It feels like there's the groups that were successful and the groups that weren't. And kind of the between the feedback from mentors and mentees, and then looking at like how much contact they had and what kind of contact, and just how that relationship developed. For us, it really highlighted that the quality of the mentor and the sort of investment that older teacher is willing to make is really what makes the difference. I can find a mentee who's highly invested, but if I'm not pairing them with a mentor who is able to really fill those needs, they're still probably not going to get what they feel that they need out of the program. Whereas mentees who are maybe a little less sure about like their own personal investment and need for mentorship are having a more successful year, or we actually run for 3 years, so the end of their tenure in the program is much stronger if their mentor was really strong. So we're really seeing that the quality of that relationship is nearly entirely based on the quality of what the mentor is willing to provide.
So get a good mentor. So I've heard you guys talk about student teaching a couple of times now. So I like, let's kind of go into that a little bit in some different realms. First, what is like, as you're hosting student teachers and as you could like set up your model place, like I think if my daughter was going to be a band director, who would I want them to go to and why? What are some of those great, attributes that we see in the supervising teachers?
Well, as I supervise student teachers as part of my responsibility, I'll kind of jump in on that. I do think at Boise State, we try to do everything we can to match up student and cooperating teacher the best we possibly can. And you're exactly right. Different teachers offer different things. And so as we place them, we try to, and we're not always successful. Sometimes personalities don't line up, but I think the things that we're looking for are somebody who, a lot of the things that we're talking about right now, they're open, they're accessible, they're able to work with people, they're a highly skilled teacher, and oftentimes that goes in correlation with highly skilled performing groups. I don't think we can discount that. that oftentimes the people with the best performing groups are the best teachers. I think that goes without saying. Not always, but oftentimes. So I think you try to match them up with the quality program. Sometimes you try to match personality, either to draw a introverted student teacher with a extroverted teacher to see if that will work. The time and willingness to put in so that they don't see a student teacher as somebody who's there to help them. The cooperating teacher should be helping the student teacher, and they're willing to give up some of their prep period or some of their after school time, or having a student teacher involves giving up time. And so you have to be at a point in your career and in your teaching that you feel like, yes, you can give up half your prep period and your time right before your wind ensemble class because they have questions. So somebody who's a giver as a mentor teacher, I think is super important.
I do think there is a significant difference between being a mentor for an early career teacher and being a mentor for a student teacher. When you have that student teacher in your room, I mean, you are their teacher and you're their evaluator in some circumstances. Now that's a collaborative evaluation, usually with the university supervisor, but you are actively helping them to, I mean, for our state, it's the Danielson rubric, to really look at where they are here and how they start to serve students better. That's not to say I'm not friendly with my student teachers, because I am. But it is a different relationship. It is a little bit more supervisory. Whereas when you're a mentor, to me, that evaluation piece should not be part of the relationship at all. Because you need to develop that really ability to trust and support and, I don't want to say lack of judgment, because I think everybody knows that, there's always a little bit of judgment in there, but that that piece is very minimal compared to in a student teaching environment.
And I think it's also important to note that when we get student teachers, right, they come in under the umbrella of the teacher in the room. So procedures, systems are in place already, classroom management, and that student teacher is operating underneath that umbrella. But when that teacher then goes out into their own classroom, that's a completely different dynamic. And then the role for us shifts from you're in my classroom, we're working on things this way, to I really need to be more of a thinking partner with that new teacher, because they may want to try and do things differently than the teacher, the cooperating teacher that they student taught with. And so part of that relationship shifting is being that sounding board that Phil talked about earlier, and being that listener and being that thinking partner for them. And giving them that space to try things that we wouldn't necessarily try, or that just look different than what we would normally do.
I have a couple questions.
And one tip I would go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, one tip I would actually give to student teachers. I don't know how many would be listening to a Growing Band Director podcast as a student teacher, but if you are, one thing that I would very much recommend is if there's anything about your student teaching experience, particularly the amount of podium time you might get, you have to be open with your mentor teacher, because oftentimes student teachers get placed with strong programs, and that means strong directors who value their podium time. And if you are a student teacher and you don't feel like you're getting enough, you need to be a little bit open with your mentor teacher and or your university supervisor. If you feel like, wow, my student teaching's halfway over and I've hardly been on the podium, I think you have to advocate for yourself.
Question I had, when you have your student teacher on the podium, do you sit there at the back of the room with your notebook and, as a supervising teacher, and let them flounder and whatever they're going to do for 40 minutes or 20 minutes or 15 or whatever, and then at the end give them the notes and debrief? Or what about having them up there and letting them teach, but you kind of being next to them and sort of holding their hand through that and adjusting things and telling the group, I'll tell my group, look, I'm going to help our student teacher And I've had that, conversation with them ahead of time as well. Like if there's something that I think they can do better, like I'm not going to wait. I'm going to try to help them through that so they can help you as well. So what approach have you guys taken? Have you done that sort of hands-on co-teacher model, or just kind of sit back and no matter what happens, give them the time? Or does it depend on sort of their skill level and where they're at?
I think that it depends on the student teacher. It depends on the mentor teacher, and it depends on the culture of your room. I actually just had a student teacher this last semester who it was a little bit of everything. And we started out with her primarily observing. And then she took over some small blocks of time, and we would do notes at the end so that she could have some of that confidence that she was building. And by the end of her time in my room, and actually Phil was her university supervisor. I mean, Phil and I are in the back of the room writing notes, but also making wild gestures to her because we know that she can do it from the podium. And so I don't know that I would do that with everybody, but she was so confident and just an amazing learner. She was just so growth oriented that we knew she wasn't going to take it personally. And also my kids are used to that I operate that way, that, I'm going to pivot right now because I don't think this is working. And so we're going to try it differently. So for my room, that wouldn't be uncomfortable, but I could see how in some rehearsal spaces that might be very tenuous.
I think we differentiate the instruction of a student teacher just like we do with students. Yeah, like what Meghan said, it's what your student teacher needs in that moment. And sometimes that can change day to day. They might be having a great day and then maybe they're floundering a little bit. And it's like, you know what, I'm going to stand back and let them see what they can do to work through it, right? Some productive struggles, to use an educationese phrase, but I give them that opportunity. And other times I'm like, look, if you need help, I'm right here. Or I'll start to step in. Hey, maybe try that again and do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to use all the different factors that you said, I mean, you laid some great ones out there. Do you sit back and let them fail? Do or do you help them out? I think for most, it's a process throughout the semester. So I think, at first, the old school method used to be, here's the keys, and you went and sat in the coffee room and let the student teacher learn that way. I don't think that's the way we do it anymore. I think you help them out at the beginning and kind of show them this, that. The students know it's your high school students or middle school, whatever. They know it's a student teacher. They can appreciate the fact that you help them out at first. And then I think you gradually wean yourself away from that. And I am not too much of a believer if it's seriously going downhill and it's like not going well. I think you proactively say some things that's going to try to help the situation. Maybe not initially, but if it continues being a problem, I think you address it.
Another thing that came up when you guys were talking a couple minutes ago that I thought of was the correlation of a good teacher equals a good band, right? And I think that's true. I mean, I also think there's great teachers in positions where the band maybe doesn't sound as great, but they're doing great teaching. Obviously, that happens too. But so we always grow, like we grow as students, and then we grow in our college years, and then we grow through our program. And what do you do when you're at a program and all of a sudden you've been there long enough and this year is worse than last year? You're like, wait, I'm still getting better, but we don't sound the same as we did. Or maybe you have a cycle of a few years where you're like, it's kind of down times for us, but I'm not putting my worth in that. Some people have said, I just, what was their answer? Where they basically just compare their band this year to what they could be. They're not comparing bands year to year. Because I've been through that. I don't know if you've been through that or what your thoughts of that are.
I have big time been through that.
Yeah, and a lot of people on those coffee meetings that we have, that comes up a lot. Kyle, you're bringing up a very good point because that happens quite a bit. And we all know that there's circumstances outside of our control that will affect things, COVID, and it just changes things. And so I agree that a lot of people think I'm a better teacher, but my ensemble's not as high performing. And I think you just have to try to step back or have somebody else come in and listen. I think somebody else come in and watch you teach. I caution people that may be happening right now, but maybe it's a little bit of a lull. You'll come out of it. It's a difficult thing. Other thoughts?
For me, it happened
Yeah.
when social media came up. When social media came up, it's like all of a sudden I felt like things were a little lower for a little while. But to me, one of the answers is programming. So now you're doing a grade 3 instead of a grade 3.5. Who cares? Find the
Yeah.
level of where they can be successful.
Well, and I think for me, every ensemble director has to have a certain amount of ego, but having that self-reflection of like, is this a healthy amount of ego? Am I really tying my self-worth to my program?
Mm-hmm.
I personally have done a ton of work on that, and I think a lot of my colleagues in the area here would say like I'm pretty open about like my whole life, not just my band. Um, and that I program for the students that I have. And that doesn't mean that it's softball literature. But I also am going to find where they are and take them as far as I can get them. And I guess I just I don't feel at the end of the day, like that makes me any less of a teacher at all.
One
Yeah.
thing that it's a huge thing for me, and both Vanessa and Megan know that, is culture and developing a culture, whether it's band, choir, orchestra, general music, whatever. It's a subject for a podcast in itself. But I think that at the root of everything is your culture. That's what really, I think, for a lot of us, is what causes us to go back to school. I know that certainly students want to be in your ensemble because they love the culture. So I think if the culture is in the right place and you're struggling getting your ensemble up to the level maybe they once were, continue to take heart in the fact that your culture is solid and go from there.
I want to just
Well,
throw
and
in
you
really
can,
quick for anybody who's looking for just a culture episode. Episode 204 was with Joel Denton from Tennessee. We had a fantastic thing. It was over an hour about exactly what you just said. So
Writing that down, 204.
204, Joel Denton.
Something for me to do this afternoon.
I will say that the that is something, the idea of if your group is lagging where you would like them to be. I'm definitely the person that immediately I look at it and go, well, I'm the person in front of them.
Mhm.
So what am I not doing? And it's something I struggle with still in my career, and I'm entering my 20th year teaching. And I do have to sometimes, I really have to kind of check myself and step back and go, you know, I need to teach the kids that are in front of me. And if they're showing me that they need some different things, then I need to adapt my teaching. And it's tough. It's tough. Like Megan said, and Phil has said this before, like it takes a certain amount of ego and pride. Like we want to do the best that we can. We believe and are committed to excellence in teaching and in our program. And it's really, really tough then to kind of like separate yourself from that and not tie the quality of who I am as a teacher to the outcome of how my students are performing. And boy, there's a lot of like internal self talk that I have to do really on a regular basis. And especially as a band person teaching outside of my primary area in strings, boy, I can't tell you the number of times I'm like, I'm so bad at this, and then I need somebody else to come in and be like, okay, calm down.
And to take it even another step, I personally would say if you're judging your entire program and how and where it sits in the ensembles and everything else based on the um, number grade that you get at festival, then I think you need to evaluate that differently and yeah, choose music that's different or do some things differently or start earlier or whatever. But don't base your entire program on that set of scores that you get at festival. It's a motivator, yes, you and possibly the students, but that's not the indicator of your program.
well, and I would just add, I mean, but this is what Vanessa, as you were talking, I was thinking, if you want to change, sometimes you have to make a change. And that could be in your room or not in your room. And one of the things that my area, we are making some changes. And when I say we, I mean my junior high school feeders and my elementary feeders. And we're kind of looking at like what's working and what's not working. And we're going to try this thing. because if that's not working and this doesn't work, well, it was already not working. So at least we might land on something that is going to work better for us, just kind of identifying those areas that are opportunities for growth. And then you have to do something different about that.
So it seems like Idaho has this great Music Educators Association that has this awesome mentorship program. Are there a lot of mentorship programs in other state associations? And maybe for people who might want to start one, or like, what does that take? What are our thoughts? Advice?
So we are so lucky here. She is not on this podcast, but a shout out to Rebecca Martin, who has been our arts content at the State Department. She is really the advocate for the way that we have the mentorship program running right now. We actually have a partnership between Idaho Music Educators Association and our State Department of Ed. And within our state, there is a push for retaining teachers, particularly in rural environments. They're really having a hard time filling and keeping roles in rural schools. And so as part of that, our State Department is willing to fund a mentorship program that will work to support and maintain those teachers. And so we are super lucky in that, and there aren't very many states. We actually have just connected with Iowa, which I guess, see, I'm not from Idaho, but from what I hear, there's an Iowa, Idaho that we get mixed up all the time. So it's funny to me that we're the two states that are working together and really kind of have a process. But other than that, there's not a lot out there. And so we're really hoping that that's something that we can help spark and get going for other people.
And I would say other states have tried it and have had varying degrees of success. And I think a lot of it, as Meghan said, for us is the partnership with Rebecca and the State Department of Ed, because it's giving us access to some funding to help support the program. But we talked to a gentleman who's involved with NAFME and Alabama, and it was like, hey, it went well one year, and then it was really tough the next year. And we've seen that in some other states. And we're excited with this partnership with Iowa because they're about 15, 20 years further down the process than we are. So it's almost like mentoring within mentoring. We've asked them to mentor us as we continue to grow here. And then, hopefully we then can in turn pass that on and mentor others that are interested.
I want to say I appreciate everybody spending their time and making time and preparing for this. I know we've kind of gained a lot out of it. I know I have. I'm sure everybody else has as well. And I know you guys can be found on social media and all that thing. So I urge people to reach out if they want to connect with you one-on-one or have further discussions about their own programs, situations, or things like that. I wanted to leave you with a question about programming. Sort of who is a composer, or what is a style of music, or a piece of music that you think maybe doesn't get represented enough, and you think people should be using with their group? Meghan, why don't you go first?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually think that marches are often under-programmed, especially in the way we teach them. I see a lot of people who we just teach what's on, like exactly what's on the page, instead of using it as an exploration of like musical decision making. We in my band room, when we are approaching a march, we do a lot of, well, what if we do it this way, and what if we do it that way, and what musical decisions can we make using something that looks pretty formulaic.
And I love the fact that you have that ability to say, well, it doesn't say soft and then loud, but maybe we'll do it soft and then we'll do it loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, my take on it is there's a ton of great composers out there, and some are very consistent, some not so much. But I would name two composers for school bands mostly that I would say are underplayed by bands in this area. I don't know nationwide, but in this area, two composers. One is Pierre Laplante, who writes fabulous music at the grade 3 and below, and even a couple more challenging ones. And Brant Carrick, who I think he doesn't have a huge output, but what he's got a couple of my absolute favorites, Bayou Breakdown and JS Jig. I absolutely love JS Jig, and I virtually never hear anybody play it. I heard it in Texas and fell in love with it. So that's I don't have a specific one, but those two I think are underplayed. Pierre LaPlante and Brant Carrick.
Just wanted to mention real quick again, if anybody, I did not have Pierre LaPlante on before he passed, but when he passed, I felt compelled to feature a lot of his music. So episode 180, I sort of went on and played a lot of his pieces for people. And then Brant Carrick, my favorite piece of his is Songs of Old Kentucky.
Oh,
I love that piece.
It's a great one.
Yep.
Me too.
Well, all three of you, thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Kyle, thank you. And thanks for everything you're doing for the community.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.